All right, porter wrap connected with a whoopee sling around a 18 to 20 inch pin hook, connected to a rope puller, which is then connected to some rigging line on that 12 to 15 inch black cherry, which is dead. And when it fell over in a storm, ended up getting hung up in that other pin oak. Been this way for probably 10 years or more. Right about there you can see where I took off some sprouting, and from there down the tree's live, so it is still well anchored in the ground. So we're going to use what's called a controlled hinge technique to cut in a face cut at the base of the tree facing the direction of the rope, and then we're going to cut another face cut just below the rope facing in the opposite direction, and that's going to cantilever this tree over and bring the butt end back out so we can start slipping it off the branches that are hung up there. Here we are up close. Right here's where we're going to put the face cut, just below the rope, right on this side, and then down at the ground here, or just above the ground, we'll put a face cut there. We're going to then do bore cuts for the back cut, leave a back strap, and then we're going to do a standard bypass cut, split or separated at least an inch below that bore cut. So we're creating this, in essence, a bypass snap cut. And then we've very lightly, only lightly pre-tensioned this line back to the porter wrap and the rope puller. And so it'll be nice and secure. And then once we're all cut up, we'll go back to the rope puller and we'll snap those two cuts, and she should cantilever over toward us. Here's another look from the south looking north. There's the tree hung up, the rope leading back to the rope puller, anchored on a tree about 40 feet back. always got to clean up your Dutchmans. Nice level face cut. Okay. Now we're going to bore it. All right. First cut in. So now time. So, let's go ahead and we are cut up. All right, time to pull this over. All right, so let's take a look at the stump here. Now, nice even hinge, possibly a little bit too thick. That's going to be approaching 1.5 to 2 inches on this 15-16 inch diameter cherry tree. You can see where the snap cut was. This is the bottom cut, and far too thick. That's a good 2.5 to even approaching 3 inches. I should have only had 1 inch there. You notice how much tension, how hard it was to pull that over. It shouldn't be that hard, and that's why. The snap cut or the bypass cut was simply too thick. And in a second here, we'll show you the top cut, see how that came out. Before we do that though, let's take a look at the stump from another angle. You can see where the face cut was, where it bent back over itself. Now, look at that back strap, folks. That's maybe about 1 inch, at most 1.5 inches. The reason why I was able to do this safely and cut on this tree when you're bore cutting is I had a good sound hinge, and you don't need much of a back strap as long as it's not overly tensioned when you're using ropes like that. That back strap and that hinge will keep that tree very, very sound, very safe. It's not going anywhere. So if you execute those cuts correctly, other than, as I just said, that snap cut on this base was a little too thick. You don't have to be overly worried about that tree coming back on you or doing something foobar, as long as you've set up your face cut, your direction, and your hinge correctly, assuming of course you have a nice sound tree that isn't rotten. So here we are. That was our top cut. You can see where the face was, you can see where the bore cut is, and you can see where our bypass cut was. That bypass cut there is also about 2 inches, so I executed that poorly. It should have been thinner, so it would have broken easier and come over much more quickly. But still, nevertheless, this can illustrate this controlled hinge technique and how you can bring these hung up trees down very easily and safely without working at the stump too much. Here's the top side of that top cut. You can see where the bypass cut broke away. You can see our hinge. Notice how I did bring it back fairly far into the trunk here so I could get make it snap and lever over a little easier. But again, when you're doing those bypass cuts like that, depending on the size of the tree of course, but a tree this size, 12 to 15 inches in diameter, you don't need any more than 1 inch for your bypass cut. But do not go too narrow. If it is too little gap between your bypass and your bore cut, then it could crack and snap on you before you want it to. Anyway, I hope you've learned something from this, and hopefully I'll be doing some more of these videos for those of you who want to learn a little bit more about precision tree felling.